What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, the story where Spider-Man has to fight the Scions of CYTORRAK, and every time he does, he dies, and then comes back to life. So, this is a story where he faces off against the Scion Cyrios, and I think we forgot to cover the second one. We'll have to go back and do that. But Cyrios is really, really cool, right? As I like to call her, Serial. So here's what goes on here, right? Like we picked up at the end of the last story, which again, I think we forgot to cover, when Peter Parker was basically celebrating his victory, or at least kind of enjoying his victory, and having dinner with Shay, basically his new girlfriend, Cyrios appeared as a little girl on a red bicycle, and she immediately pulls him through time. Now, the cool thing about this story is that it is going to have time travel shenanigans, but it's not going to be overly complicated. It's going to be just like regular time travel as you imagine it, just jumping back and forth through time. Although the ending is amazing. And so what this does is it initially leads to Serial grabbing Peter Parker and taking him into the past on the night that Uncle Ben died. And for a moment, Peter Parker gets caught up in this whole scenario, right? If I can just get inside and stop the bullet, I can save Uncle Ben. He doesn't realize that he can't necessarily change things. Now, one of the things that I want to specify here when it comes to altering the past in Marvel, because in a lot of these instances, you're going to see the question, or really have the question of, what if Peter Parker did intervene? What if Peter Parker did save things and change things and so on and so forth? How would that work? So when it comes to time travel in Marvel Comics, you guys are aware of like the multiverse and branch universes. Most alternate realities in Marvel are the result of time travel, right? Which is to say, like, Spider-Man goes back in time and stops himself from getting rid of the Venom symbiote that in turn went to Eddie Brock. Well, now there's a whole other alternate reality where he kept the symbiote. Some of these alternate universes just come into existence on their own. The original Ultimate Universe is a really good example of that. But in this instance, it's gonna be one of these things where Marvel's gonna play it kind of fast and loose. That while the idea of altering the past can be done, and it will lead to an alternate reality, Marvel's also gonna kind of tell us there is no changing the past. But it is more of like a metaphorical representation of who people are in the here and now. And you'll see what I'm talking about once we get to that point. If it seems a little complicated, I promise it's not. And so once this whole situation unfolds, Spider-Man's forced to witness the death of Uncle Ben. That's when Serial tells him, that's why I'm here. That's your challenge. I'm taking you through time. There's nothing you can do to stop me. And I am going to force you to rewatch every single death you've ever experienced. Now, one of the things that I want to specify here as we get to this moment with Gwen Stacy is this was a very contentious moment in Marvel Comics when Jerry Conway wrote it. And honestly, I don't even know if Jerry Conway has actually definitively answered which one happened. So on the night Gwen Stacy died, you kind of see things playing out exactly the way they're playing out here. The Green Goblin ends up snatching up Gwen Stacy, and then ultimately Gwen Stacy dies. There are 2 ways in which this story is interpreted. The first is that Gwen Stacy was already dead, which was a statement that was made by the Green Goblin within the context of the story. The second interpretation is that when Gwen Stacy was knocked off the top of the bridge and she went flying down into the water, or was supposed to go into the water, Spider-Man shot his webbing into her foot and her neck cracked. And so the argument there is that Spider-Man, in his recklessness, unintentionally killed Gwen Stacy. I don't know if there was ever a definitive answer on which one was which, and fans have debated that for years and years and years, decades even. Fans have like gone back and forth on which one actually happened. But regardless of how that scenario played out, the significance here was the death of Gwen. That the death of Gwen Stacy, as Sal over at Comic Pop put it perfectly, he said that it was one of these stories where, like the way that Uncle Ben taught Spider-Man the true nature, that with great power must also come great responsibility, the death of Gwen Stacy taught Spider-Man he cannot be reckless, and that he, as a superhero, has people around him that care about him, and putting those individuals in jeopardy by way of just kind of being nonchalant and cavalier about his antics could ultimately come back and backfire on him. And so the death of Gwen Stacy was a huge moment in the Peter Parker mythos. And so as he looks over these moments, he says, this is Cyrios' trick, distraction, keeping me off balance. So all I can do is react. I know that I cannot save Gwen the same way that I could not save Uncle Ben, but I can end this stupid contest quickly. And he goes on the attack, but nothing happens because she literally yanks them through time. Now, one of the other things that I also want you guys to notice here is that with all the powers that these Scions have, they're but a fraction of the power of CYTORRAK. So if at the end of this story, Spider-Man has to fight Cyttorak, I have a very difficult time in seeing how he can win. Because what you're seeing over the course of this, as easy as it is to miss, is you're seeing Spider-Man facing off against an astronomical being, somebody with the ability to manipulate time. And when it comes to manipulating and controlling time, they're an almost nigh indestructible force, right? The same thing as with Reverse Flash in DC Comics. How do you defeat a guy who exists in all moments at one time? He can always come back because you never know which version of him you're going to be facing off against. But with time travel, this girl could come back and save herself. She could go into the past and keep someone like Spider-Man from ever coming into existence in the first place. The entirety of the universe becomes your plaything if you have the ability to manipulate time. You can even go back far enough and prevent certain things happening in the universe of incredible significance. For example, the emergence of Galactus. And so with the ability to manipulate time, it's no wonder Marvel wastes Kang the Conqueror the way they do, but it's also no small wonder why Cyrios is so incredibly powerful. Because when Spider-Man goes on the attack, when he's brought to this bell tower and time is manipulated, it's from the old Web of Spider-Man comics, the Amazing Spider-Man stories, after Secret Wars 1984, when he tried to get the symbiote off of him. But through all of this, he sees it all as kind of a distraction, and his main focus is Cyrios herself. But every time he tries to attack, he gets yanked at another point through time. In this particular instance, it's when Eddie Brock is down in the bell tower. So basically kind of around the same moment that this is all happening. Technically, it counts as teleportation, but if a person is standing in front of you, they freeze time, and then they step, 3 feet to the left of you, and then they unfreeze time, is it really any different from teleportation as far as your naked eye is concerned, right? It's all more or less the same thing. And so with that being the case, she's like, okay, you only hesitated a few seconds that time. That's really well done. Shall we see where we end up next, or when we end up next? And that's kind of the bigger message that she starts to give to him, because as he starts getting yanked through all these moments, she says, "Champion, I am not like my brothers. I have studied you humans since Strange first brokered his deal with my father. Your lives are but flickers, yet you spend all of your time in the past or the future without the power to change either. The inevitability of time is not just about aging, but also change. While you physically change, Champion, your failures are embarrassingly forever the same. It is predictable and so boring." And that is a profound statement to make here. Yes, the overall gist of the story is that Spider-Man is basically working on behalf of Doctor Doom, right? The guy who took the powers of Doctor Strange, and he's kind of the earthly savior against the forces of CYTORRAK, right? When Doctor Strange made a deal saying, "I'll fight your avatars like once every year," or something like that, and if I win, then you, CYTORRAK, do not invade Earth. If I lose, the Earth is yours, right? So sure, Spider-Man is carrying out that campaign right now, and hopefully he wins so that the entirety of Earth and the universe itself don't fall to the whims of CYTORRAK. But the bigger point is the nature of time and human action. The reality is that for a lot of us, you, me, and so many people out there, we do kind of live in the past, right? We do focus on past failures. If I had done this differently, if I had done that differently, if I had invested in Bitcoin back when it was fractions of a cent, I'd be a billionaire right now. But you can't do anything to fix it. You can't do anything to change it. And if you can't fix something, why are you worried about it, right? If you could fix something, you'd be fixing it instead of worrying about it. And if you couldn't fix it, worrying about it wouldn't do any good. But for us as human beings, we often occupy anywhere else than the moment. Sometimes we do, but oftentimes we don't. It's not necessarily to say that it's a failing, but she asks, "It does make me wonder, how can you not see that failure is your only option no matter when you are, in the past or the future?" And so it's one of these things where the reality and kind of what Cyrios missing here is that, yes, like we as humans make terrible mistakes, right? And oftentimes we spend more time looking to the future or looking to the past than we do living in the present. But it's also because we as people are reactionary, right? It's only ever after we screwed something up that we realize we screwed it up in the first place, because we don't always know what the right answer is in the moment. And so to say that a human being focuses a lot on the past, in some ways it could be dwelling, in some ways it could be living in the past, neither of which are healthy. But what human beings also have the ability to do is learn from the past, to study the past and to say, where did I go wrong? Okay, well then I just won't do that again, or try to avoid that as best I can. And then looking to the future is simply looking for those future pitfalls that you would now recognize because of your past experiences. And so it's very, very important for us to be able to look at both the past and the present. But for a character like Cyrios, somebody all-powerful, the ability to manipulate time, because she can go back and forth, whereas we as humans can't, she sees time in a wholly different way. Just don't do that, right? And that's it, right? For us, it's a little more complex than that. But through all of this, right, Spider-Man says, I hate time travel, all the paradoxes and meaningless, changeable rules. But a paradox is exactly what I need right now. I attack Cyrios directly, and she just skips to another time. I have to work smarter, not harder. And so what ends up happening is she brings him again to another moment in his life. Peter Parker recognizes it immediately, and he says, hey, since you like the sound of your own voice, answer a quick question for me. You're the inevitability of time, right? So you should already know who wins this fight. She says, you fool, you think you can. Still, you can barely move. And this is the moment when Spider-Man was walking out and the guy who ultimately ended up escaping to shoot Uncle Ben, right? Stop that thief before he makes it to the elevator. And that's where Cyrios says, like, you will see that you fail in every single time. How pathetic. But because of the fact that Cyrios had brought Peter Parker here to his own past in order to force him to watch himself allow the criminal to escape that will kill Uncle Ben, Spider-Man is here. It's his past version of himself. And so he immediately recognizes what's going on in hearing his future self talk and goes on the attack and like literally goes after Cyrios, right? And that's why Peter says, she said, surprise me as she dragged me back and forth through time. So I slowed down for a second and I thought, right? I set my mind to being in the right place at the right time and trust my real superpower, my brain, to do the rest of the work. And then I use my lesser powers to clean her clock. And so literally just kind of like knocks her out in the moment. Now, of course, there is a bit of a conversation between himself and his, past self. And it's just kind of like, don't you love paradoxes? And it's like, I mean, I guess, I don't know, man, like time travel shenanigans. I mean, does what just happened fly in the face of everything we know about time travel? For the most part, yeah. But like, who cares? It's amazing. At this point, I don't really care. I'm just going with the story, man. I just love it. But of course, this pisses Cyrios off to no end. Because as you would imagine, when it comes to like such a powerful demonic entity that has the ability to manipulate time, they're not really used to being defeated, especially when you walk in with an incredibly high level of confidence and arrogance. Then it's just kind of like, who are you to question me? Who are you to tell me that I'm wrong? And so in the face of that, and in the face of that challenge, of course, she immediately gets pissed off and kills Spider-Man on the spot. And what she does is she doesn't really kill him by like disintegrating him or anything like that. She actually splits his mind across every single moment in his life. So in the same way that like Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen sees every moment in time simultaneously, that's what's happening to Peter Parker, except it's his own life. He's experiencing every single moment in his own life all at one time. It's unimaginable pain, like nothing he's ever experienced before. It overwhelms his brain and literally he dies, probably from some kind of an aneurysm, or his brain just shuts down. But at that point, he wakes back up again. Another life has been spent here. And so what that does is it actually kind of gives him a new perspective on the world, because at that point he switches over to Shay. Now Shay again is effectively his girlfriend, right? I mean, there's no real reason to call them anything other than that. And what she does is where Peter talks about how stressed he is, of course, not really being able to go into detail about, the whole avatar of saving the world and the universe from the nigh calamitous destruction that it would experience at the hands of CYTORRAK, that ultimately she's just kind of like, okay, well then I'll take you on a picnic tomorrow. But then after that, he ends up coming across Aunt May. Now he is unemployed. He doesn't work for Osborn Industries anymore. There was a donation that was promised to Feast and Aunt May by Norman Osborn. Peter was supposed to ask about that. He forgot about it. So it's kind of the responsibilities that he still owes to other people in his life. Kind of the Parker Luck, the core story of Spider-Man, right? Try to balance that life between being a superhero, keeping your identity and your actions hidden, and people who don't know about your secret life, but also do have expectations of you. And so initially he just kind of snaps at Aunt May, like, I'm doing the best I can, right? Just cut me some slack. But then he immediately kind of calms down, right? Because he remembers enough to know that, like, snapping at Uncle Ben and then realizing Uncle Ben died, right? It's just kind of a guilt that really carries with you probably for the rest of your life. And so where Aunt May ends up going home after Peter's apologetic, Peter goes to visit with Black Cat Felicia Hardy. Now, of course, Felicia Hardy's single at this point in Marvel Comics, so we both know that if Peter was just like, hey girl, let's head back to my place, she'd do it in an instant, because we all know, man, like she's got it. Right, she's down bad for Peter Parker. But there is a great conversation between the two of them, because there is a somewhat will they, won't they type thing between Felicia Hardy and Peter. And sure, they've certainly touched naughty bits in the past, but there is also a very close friendship between the two of them. So much so that, like, one, Felicia Hardy knows his secret identity, and two, she also knows everything that he's doing right now, facing off against the scions of CYTORRAK, really CYTORRAK's kids and that kind of thing. But there is this moment where he's just kind of like, I don't know if I can make all of this stuff work. And in fact, he says that, right? I don't know how to make it all work. I'm not sure that I can. Trying to balance my personal life, the normal life as Spider-Man, trying to deal with crime in the city of New York, helping the average person, and then now I'm an avatar for saving all life on Earth at the hands of Doctor Doom, who has the powers of Doctor Strange, and I don't even know if I can pull all this off, right? If I fail, the Earth and the universe, it'll all go sideways. And so one of the things that happens is that Felicia Hardy says, there is so much in life that we do not control, but happiness, small moments of delight, we can claim those for ourselves, and we should, unapologetically. And so it's really awesome, because while she is to a degree saying, like, this is the reason why I'm a criminal, there's a lot of wisdom in that statement, right? Like, life moves on whether you want it to or not. And when the time comes that you and I and everybody that we know are just bodies in the ground, the world will go on, and eventually the world will forget or scarcely even know that we even existed in the first place. But still, time marches on. The world keeps spinning. And it's not to say that our lives are meaningless, it's simply just to say we are but one person on a planet full of billions of people. There is so much that we cannot control. There is so much that we just can't snap our fingers and just fix everything instantaneously. So finding those small little moments of happiness in this life, companionship, trips, vacations, amazing food, Peter Luger's steakhouse, all these little moments here and there, we should just pursue them. As long as we don't bring harm to other people, or as long as we don't break any meaningful laws, of course the exception being Luigi, that at the end of the day, we should just pursue these things about happiness, right? We should pursue these moments of happiness in our life. And so it is quite profound, right? It's a very profound statement. Now, of course, Peter's like, is this where you're trying to talk me into being a criminal? And she's like, hey, look, man, I mean, I'm not saying you should become a criminal. I'm just saying there's something to be said about having a life where you just sort of do what you want to, and that's it. And so she's just like, I need to get this bag, this bag out of here and hand it over so I can collect my $2 million. And Spider-Man's, yeah, so like about that. And she's like, did you stink, Peter Parker? And he's like, I know, because I assume he used some kind of magic to like set the crown back to where it was supposed to be. I'm not entirely sure. But pursuing these moments of happiness, right? These small moments of happiness when you can, where you can, because tomorrow's never promised to anybody. Where he initially intended to cancel on Shay because he didn't know when the next challenge was going to arrive, he's just kind of like, you know what? I'll go for it. So like he just shows up there with some $8 wine from a bodega, which I gotta be honest with you guys, don't do that. For Spider-Man in a Spider-Man comic, yes, it's funny. If you show up to a picnic with your girl with an $8 bottle of wine from a bodega, unless like that's all you can afford, that's a wholly different circumstance. But if you can afford better, don't go cheap, son, especially when it comes to something like wine. They ultimately end up just kind of enjoying the afternoon together, right? They just spend time together. Because for Peter, he's just grabbing these small little moments because he doesn't know what's going to happen next. He doesn't even know if he's ever going to see Shay again. There's no clue as far as he's concerned on how things may play out. But through it all, he's actually being watched by Calix and Kyra, right? The next two challengers, who are seemingly twins that work together. But here's where the ending gets really, really cool. Because those of you guys who are familiar with CYTORRAK are looking at these kids and you're looking at these scions and you're just kind of like, okay, cool. But like the only one that matters is Juggernaut, right? Like the earthly avatar of CYTORRAK. Rob, where is Juggernaut? Well, ladies and gentlemen, Juggernaut's in Alaska, playing video games on a couch, enjoying his time, going for a 3-point shot. But what ends up happening is suddenly he gets a kind of signal of sorts, right? Something resonates with him on a personal level, and he just gets up and leaves. And it's like, why are you quitting? And it's like, there's something wrong, right? I need to go focus on something. And it's like, I can't play, I have to prepare. So seemingly this is gonna go one of two ways. Either Spider-Man is going to fight Juggernaut, or Juggernaut is gonna help Spider-Man against CYTORRAK. But Juggernaut is bound by the power of CYTORRAK. So who knows what's gonna happen? But we'll find out, guys, in a month. With that being said, we're gonna bring this to an end. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, and I will catch you all later. Peace.